Shalom. First and foremost, call halal yamla Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai Ba'ashem Harachakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone, from whom I learned this truth from, and also peace and salutations to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. And pretty much in this video, I wanted to go into Second Esdr, the fourth chapter. All right, and pretty much read about, or rather, go into how, pretty much in this chapter, as Esdras was pretty much sighing and crying to Yahweh Shemashai, and looking upon what was going on amongst our people around this time. As during the time of Esdras, we were in captivity during the later years of the Babylonian Empire, the Neo-Babylonian Empire, going into the early years of the Persian and Mede Empire. The prophet Esdras was around during this during this time in history. And pretty much as Esdras, as he was around, looking at the condition our people were in during that time, the Babylonian captivity, the Persian and Mede captivity, the temple, not being rebuilt yet, nor the wall around Jerusalem and things like that, and still seeing our people pretty much in a cast down state. As he was pretty much going into in this chapter, how he was basically praying to the Lord and asking the Lord for answers, pretty much seeking to the Lord if he was gonna still come through with his promises of restoring our people and restoring our nation during that time. Basically sighing and crying to the Lord and looking for answers. And so, as the Lord, through as Esdras was constantly praying to the Lord and complaining to the Lord and asking the Lord for answers. Ultimately, the Most High sent an angel to Esdras to comfort him and provide him with the answers that he needed, to boost up his faith, to get himself together. All right, and ultimately prophesy to our people. Okay, and as you read into it, Second Esdr 4 verse 25, it says, "What will he then do unto his name, whereby we are called? Of these things have I asked." Okay, verse 26. "Then answered he me." All right, so this is basically the angel answering Esdras, all right, and responding to his prayers and his complaints that he was given to the Lord, right? So this is the angel responding to Esdras. Second Esdras 4 verse 26. "Then answered he me and said, The more thou searchest, the more thou shalt marvel, for the world hasteth fast to pass away." Verse 27. "And cannot comprehend the things that are promised to the righteous in time to come. For this world is full of unrighteousness and infirmities." And just as the world during the time of Esdras was full of unrighteousness and infirmities under the Neo-Babylonian Empire, Persian and Mede Empire, well, how much more today in this current day under Babylon the Great, under the rulership of Esau Edom and this wicked beast system, America, NATO, and the EU, along with the current state of Israel. How much more in these outer days, as we're at the end of Esau's world, is the whole entire earth full of unrighteousness and infirmities. Okay, wickedness, evils multiplying in the earth. All right, lies and deceptions being the narrative that dominates the earth on all levels. Lies within the school system, the education system, lies within the political system, lies within the money system. Okay, Esau continuing to this very day to lie on the scriptures, labeling himself as this Christian, Christian nationalist and things like that. This whole entire system that Esau is built up, all right, is built up off of lies, blasphemy against Yahweh Shemashai. You see that? Speaking great words, and as well, reinforcing his lies, okay, through pseudoscience, technology, statistics, all right, labeling our people, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans as, low IQs, inferior, savages, you know, monkeys, beasts, okay. This whole entire world under the rulership of Esau, Edom, is full of unrighteousness and infirmities, and of course it's not just the Edomites as well, but it's also the heathen nations, because the heathen nations also have a major part, okay, in all the unrighteousness and wickedness and evils that's being done under the earth, because the heathen, Moab, Ishmael, the Hamites, Elam, they have their gods and their idols that they bow down and pray to, okay, that they perform all types of left hand rituals and practices in dedication of, okay, because even when you read in chapters such as Psalms, the second chapter, it speaks about how the heathen, the kings of the nations of the earth, basically conspire against Yahweh Shai and against his people. Okay, why do the heathen rage and imagine a vain thing? All right, which is what? The NWO agenda. Okay, where they want to put all humanity all on one big digital grid. Okay, governed by AI, technocrats, pseudoscience. All right, and ultimately through the charagma, the microchip. All right, these heathen, all right, all of these heathen, starting with the tabernacles of Esau, Edom, are all against Yahweh Shai, and against his ways, and against his laws and his commandments, and as well against his chosen people, the true Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. And due to this world being ran by the heathen nations, all right, starting with Esau, Edom, look at the earth right now. Okay, the food is all jacked up, the air is all jacked up, the water, okay, the visions amongst the people at an all-time high. All right, people throughout the earth, having no fear of the Lord, no belief in the Lord. Okay, people look to technology and AI as the gods that govern their lives and influence their decision makings throughout their everyday lives. Okay, what they eat, what they listen to, what they take in. Okay, what their views on the world should be, what their views on marriage and in a relationship should be. Okay, people base their beliefs on all different aspects of life based off of what they see on technology. Okay, the advice that AI gives them, the advice that Esau gives them. Okay, things that they see on social media. All right, and all these things. Okay, all these devices and philosophies and the ways of the heathen nations. Look what it's all led to throughout the earth as of 2025. All right, all manner of unrighteousness and infirmities. What is infirmities? Sicknesses, diseases, and we clearly see that's plaguing throughout the whole entire earth. People are sick, full of all kinds of different ailments and things all in their flesh. Okay, the jab included, right? People are just dropping off and going back to the spirit world. All right, rapidly, especially from 2020 up until now. Ever since that that coconut juice came out. Okay, people have been full of all types of infirmities. Okay, man. But it says, 2 Ezra 4 verse 27, and cannot comprehend the things that are promised to the righteous in time to come, for this world is full of unrighteousness and infirmities. And you see, and when you take a bold stance through the Holy Spirit and power of Yahweh Shai, speaking out against all the unrighteousness and infirmities in this world, okay, you get made an offender for a word. You see, you get demonized, you get cursed out at. Look at, for example, look at our people that's all on social media and all on TikTok, okay, talking mad crap against this Israelite ministry, because what? We preach that our people are the chosen people of the Heavenly Father through His Son, the true Israelites, okay? The so-called white man, Esau, Edom, is a devil, and the Lord's getting ready to bring judgment upon him, along with the rest of these heathen nations. And 2/3 of our people give us all kinds of crap for that, okay? All because they want to continue worshiping their white Jesus and following their plantation Christianity. Okay, praying to the Most High to heal America. You know, so that Jake can bring back the '90s and bring back things to the way they were back in the '90s and the 2000s and the '80s and whatnot. All right, when you take a hardcore stance, okay, standing up against the unrighteousness and the wickedness that goes on in this world, okay, you get you receive backlash for it. As a matter of fact, because even when you go to Psalms 59 in verse 14, it says, "And judgment is turned away backward, and justice standeth afar off." There's no true justice in this world. Okay, even look at, for example, the whole, controversy with the Epstein thing. Every now and then, especially since, Trump got reelected back in office. Okay, here and there they've been dangling the whole Epstein thing in front of people, acting as if some type of action was going to be made, in regard to that whole situation, acting as if they were going to release the list and things like that. But ultimately, when we've been looking at it, all throughout this past year, nobody's really been held accountable for it. Okay, that there's no true justice coming out of that situation. All right, no names have really been dropped, like talking about. All right, and that's what this whole entire system is built up of. Okay, justifying the wicked and at the same time condemning the just. Okay, justifying those that are doing all manner of wickedness and evil throughout the earth. Okay, and condemning, all right, those that are, using platforms to just simply speak out against all the injustices and the wickedness that's being done throughout the earth. But especially against us, the hopeful elect, that are taking a hardcore stance through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai, cursing out and condemning this wicked and perverse world that we live in. But it says, Isaiah 59 verse 14, "And judgment is turned away backward, and justice standeth afar off. For truth is fallen in the street, and equity cannot enter." Okay, verse 15, "Yea, truth faileth, and he that departeth from evil maketh himself a prey." See that? So when you depart from evil, and even go as far as taking a hardcore stance, speaking out against the evils and the wickedness, all right, and the pseudoscience and the technology that's running rampant throughout the earth, you make yourself a prey. Okay, and it says, "And the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai saw it, and it displeased him that there was no judgment." See that? And let's read verse 15 in NLT. Slakia. Isaiah 59 verse 15 in NLT says, "Yes, truth is gone, and anyone who renounces evil is attacked." See that? And that's what it's getting ready to come down to. Okay, very soon, as we clearly see, Esau is getting ready to come down with great wrath. All right, and he's attacking free speech, and he's using certain situations that's happening throughout Babylon the Great under the Trump administration to justify attacking free speech, such as the whole situation with Captain Kirk, C. Kirk. All right, and he's using the whole narrative of Antifa to basically demonize anybody that speaks out against fascism and dictatorship, and speaking out against the unrighteous decrees and draconian measures that Trump is pushing towards. Okay, speaking out against the mobilization of National Guard troops. Trump is using the whole this whole Trump administration is using the whole talking point of Antifa and labeling people as Antifa. And mind you, Antifa by Trump himself was labeled as a terrorist organization. So basically, Trump is throwing out this whole Antifa narrative to basically justify and categorize anybody that speaks out against the wickedness and the evils of this earth, and especially against this administration, as a terrorist. Make a man an offender for a word, right? But it says, Isaiah 59 verse 15 again, it says, "Yes, truth is gone, And anyone who renounces evil is attacked. And that's what it's getting ready to come down to. All right, anybody that speaks out against the system, that speaks out against the NWO agenda, they're going to be persecuted. And especially we know, okay, we the men of the Lord, the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel, we know that we're going to be, all right, most certainly attacked and persecuted for the word of Yahweh Shema Shai's sake. As scriptures even speaks about in 2nd Ezra 16, that there's going to be great insurrection against them that fear the Lord. You see, and right now, have we been hearing lately that Trump is looking to invoke the Insurrection Act? You see that? Well, who is he going to? All right, under the Esau Edom under this Trump administration, and ultimately, who is he going to direct insurrection against? Okay, those of us of the nation of Israel that fear the Lord, Yahweh Shema Shai. Those of us that are of the hopeful elect, those of us that are taking a hardcore stance, standing upon our feet and renouncing the wickedness and the evil of this earth, okay, ruled by the biblical Edomites. You see that? And it says, the Lord Yahweh Shema Shai looked and was displeased to find there was no justice. Yeah, the Lord is looking down, displeased to see that, okay, as you have a small remnant of his people speaking out against the wickedness and the evils of this world reigned by Esau Edom. People are demonizing us, canceling us out, okay, gainsaying and mocking and scoffing, okay. So guess what? So it's all going to lead to Yahweh Shema Shai bringing justice, okay, for the elect of his people, okay. And the Most High is going to bring justice for his elect through Yahweh Shai, his begotten Son, all right, his right arm. All right. So going back to 2nd Ezra 4 and 27 again, it says, and cannot comprehend the things that are promised to the righteous in time to come, for this world is full of unrighteousness and infirmities. It says, but as concerning the things whereof thou askest me, I will tell thee, for the evil is sown, but the destruction thereof is not yet come. Okay, the evil is sown, but the destruction thereof is not yet come. All right, now I have the word sow, S-O-W, in the etymonline.com. It says from Old English sowan, and it means to scatter seed upon the ground or plant in the earth. Then it says disseminate. All right. So as it went into again, to scatter seed upon the ground or plant it in the earth. And we know sowing deals with planting seed into the ground, watering seed, giving it sunlight, making sure that seed grows into a tree or a plant, for the purpose of it bearing fruit, or whatever it's meant to bear, right? We know that aspect of sowing seed, but as it also went into, it said to scatter seed upon the ground. See that? So another aspect of sowing seed also deals with scattering seed. Okay, and so reading it again in 2nd Ezra 4 verse 28, but as concerning the things whereof thou askest me, I will tell thee, for the evil is sown, but the destruction thereof is not yet come. All right, and clearly we see evil sown throughout the earth. Okay, evil's being planted in the earth and multiplying throughout the earth. Just as it was on the ancient Greek Empire. All right, which is ran by Edomites, by the way. As it speaks of in First Maccabees, the first chapter in the Apocrypha. When the Greeks came into power, evils were multiplied in the earth, right? Well, guess what? Here we are in Babylon the Great today, right? The revival of the ancient Greco-Roman system today. And who do we see in power all over again? Esau, Edom, that which then is now. And under this rulership of Esau, Edom, which we're pretty much at the end of Esau's rule, all right? But, from the Renaissance period up until now, all right, under the rulership of Esau, Edom. What have we seen spread throughout the earth all over again? Evils, okay, colonization, Esau, going around the earth, waging war, coming down with the sword, great robber and murder, all right, and using plantation Christianity and white Jesus to justify his colonization and his great robber and murder, right, and the sword, okay, even going as far as, okay, pretty much forcing his way into the Holy Land, and calling themselves the JEWs, right? And even to this very day, using the Bible to still, wage and justify war. Okay, look at Netanyahu, all right, using the scriptures to refer to the Palestinians as Amalek, okay, to justify committing, all right, to justify pretty much getting rid of those people out of their land, out of Gaza, and pretty much wiping them out, all right. But that's how Esau operates. Okay, he's sown evil all throughout the earth. Okay, evil is sown even to this very day. You got all types of division everywhere. All right, warfare, conflict between the different nations. Okay, economic instability with the food system. As we see famine on the rise. All right, civil war brewing up. Okay. There's all out, manner of chaos and anarchy brewing up. Okay, evil is sown throughout the earth. And as we went into another aspect of that word sown, also goes into scattered. Okay, so not only is evil sown and deeply rooted into the earth under this corrupt rulership of Esau, Edom through Babylon the Great, but also evil is scattered throughout the earth. Okay, again, evils are multiplied in the earth during the time of the ancient Greeks, and likewise in this time during the revival of the Greco-Roman Empire, America, along with NATO and the EU. Okay, evil is scattered throughout the earth once again. All right, and especially we see evil scattered throughout here in Babylon the Great. Okay, in a form of, again, division amongst the people. All right, this whole left wing, right wing division that's pretty much taking over the whole entire country and taking over the minds of the people. Okay. We also see evils scattered in the form of, Trump mobilizing these National Guard troops throughout these different major cities and more. Okay, these ICE agents all across the United States, grabbing up the northern tribes and even, coming after the southern tribes, Jake now, right? We see AI all over the place. Okay, evil is both sown and scattered. Okay, at an all-time high in inside of days, but as I said, but the destruction thereof is not yet come. And ultimately, as we see all this evil and division and wickedness and chaos all throughout the earth, okay, as of right now, why hasn't the destruction come yet? Because the elect still have to be sealed. Literally, the sealing of the elect is the only thing that's stopping, okay, all this evil and judgment from Yahweh Shemashai taking over the earth yet. You see that? Because the elect still, there's many of the elect that still need to be sealed first before the Lord can unleash, all the destruction and chaos and judgments that He has set forth in the earth things out of days. Okay, great famine, great death, civil war, civil unrest, martial law. Okay, robot troops and robot dogs. Esau coming down with the sword. All right, teeth of wild beasts, weather effects. All right, all these things, apparitions. Okay, the elect still needing to be sealed is the only thing that's stopping the Lord from unleashing all these things as of right now. But guess what? We're pretty much at the point where the elect are just about sealed. Okay, when you look at it, okay, pretty much what more is there to say at this point? The new song has been sung. Okay, the man of sin, the wicked has been identified. Esau, Edom. All right, the beast system has been identified. All right, America, NATO, and the EU. The image of the beast has been identified. That the way that America pretty much mimics ancient Rome and ancient Greece, reviving the ways of ancient Rome and ancient Greece into the earth. And as well, the mark of the beast has most certainly been identified, the microseed, which we clearly see Esau moving towards that direction. Okay, Neuralink, all right, Sweden, over there in Sweden, Sweden has been implementing the microchip for years, okay, on their people, all right, and then now, as of lately, we see countries, okay, moving more and more towards digital ID systems, okay. Recently, out there in the UK, Great Britain, you had the I believe that was the Prime Minister, if I'm not mistaken, of the UK, pretty much announced that he was going to launch a digital ID system across all adults throughout the UK. For the purpose of them being able to work, as well as to so say fight the immigration crisis that's going on out there in the UK, as well as so-called fight crime. And guess what? Here in the United States, Babylon the Great, don't we see an immigration crisis throughout the United States, as well as don't we see an issue with crime still across the United States? So guess what? The fact that we see Great Britain, the UK, rolling out a digital ID system, which is all going to ultimately lead to the charagma, the microchip, the MOTB. Well, guess what? America, Babylon the Great, who comes out of Great Britain, right? Who follows after the footsteps of Great Britain, which you think is getting ready to come over here very soon to the United States, especially under this Trump administration. A digital ID system, all for the purpose of what? Dealing with the so-called immigration crisis here in America, as well as so-called fighting crime, all right? And it's all going to lead to the MOTB system being rolled out across Babylon the Great America, okay? The Revelation 13 and 16. And hey, the fact that we see Trump, mobilizing National Guard troops, ICE agents, and then very soon, actual active duty military troops across the United States throughout different cities, that's all setting up, okay, a perfect scenario to shut everything down, okay, implement martial law, pass the Insurrection Act, so that he can use these soldiers and these ICE agents to implement the MOTB, okay. This is all coming down the pipe. We the hopeful elect, the men of the Lord, the prophets of Yahweh Bashem Ashai, starting with the apostles and the bishops and the elders of Great Millstone, down to the least of us that are of the hopeful elect. We clearly see these things coming down the pipe, all right, as we've been given the eyes to see and the ears to hear. We've been given that eye salve, all right, and as well through the Holy Spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem Ashai, we're not ignorant of the devices of Satan. See that? So it says again, 2 Ezra 4 verse 28, but as concerning the things whereof thou askest me, I will tell thee, for the evil is sown, but the destruction thereof is not yet come. Verse 29, if therefore that which is sown be not turned upside down, and if the place where the evil is sown pass not away, then cannot it come that is sown with good. All right. So let's read verse 29 again. It says, if therefore that which is sown be not turned upside down, and if the place where the evil is sown pass not away, okay, what is this place talking about? Babylon the Great America. Okay, because this is the place that the Lord is going to destroy off of the face of the earth. Okay, through World War III, when the nuclear missiles are going to be shot off, okay, and turn this place, America, Babylon the Great, into a lake of fire, all right, along with, okay, the fire that's going to come from the chariots of Yahushua and the holy angels, okay, what Esau calls so-called UFOs. America, Babylon the Great, this is the place right here that's getting ready to pass away, okay. But it says again, if therefore that which is sown be not turned upside down, and if the place where the evil is sown pass not away, then cannot it come that is sown with good. Okay, so basically, in other words, what is ultimately verse 29 talking about? Basically, it's saying, all right, things have to get worse before they get better. Okay, and of course, the latter part of verse 29, where it says, "Then cannot it come that is sown with good." All right, that's talking about the kingdom. When we enter into the kingdom. All right, when we, the true Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, all right, those of us that are of the hopeful elect, when we return back to the Holy Land upon the return of Yahweh Shai, okay, instead of the kingdom, all right, via the heathen nations, all right, being subject unto us and serving captivity unto us, all right, that's, okay, the place is going to be sown with good, okay, the kingdom, the throne of David, all right, but as this verse is going into, all right, that which is sown with good, the kingdom, cannot come until, all right, as it said again, if therefore that which is sown be not turned upside down, okay. So basically, what this verse is ultimately saying is that, things got to get worse before they get better. Okay, things got to get worse in these outer days before the kingdom can be established. All right, and that's all we see all throughout the planet Earth in these outer days, especially as of 2025. Any news outlet that you can look at, whether it be a major news platform such as Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, for example, or some type of news app on your phone, or even especially alternative news media. Okay, any form of news outlet that you can come across, all you see is nothing but bad news happening throughout throughout Babylon the Great, throughout the earth. Okay, somebody getting offed. Okay, some politician or some governor getting into it with another politician or another governor, or going back and forth with the president. Okay, some type of corruption happening throughout the earth. Okay, somebody stealing from somebody, or some corporation or big time company getting busted for fraud and corruption and taking people's money, or just whatever the case is. Okay, under this world ran by Esau, Edom, all you see is nothing but division, corruption everywhere, lying. Okay, things getting swept under the rug. All right, warfare, violence. Okay, more and more economic instability, more and more people catching hell. Okay, the cost of living going up, cost of food going up. Life is just getting worse and worse in these outer days under Esau, Edom. All right, but this is how things are supposed to be in these outer days before the kingdom can be established. All right, things must get worse before things get better. Okay, and this is all part of, all right, the straight gate getting even straighter. All right, things getting tighter, things getting more uncomfortable on the earth. Okay, all the mirth of the land being gone, happiness being gone. Okay, just everything just dropping down to an all-time low in this world, in his outer days. Okay, this is how the Lord intended it to be. All right, according to prophecy's sake, for things to get better, ultimately for the kingdom of heaven to be established. All right, it says again, 2nd Ezra 4, verse 29 again, if therefore that which is sown be not turned upside down, and if the place where the evil is sown pass not away, things then cannot it come that is sown with good. And right now, you look all over social media, you look all over TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter X, YouTube, you name it, Facebook. Okay, all you see is people doing videos or going back and forth in the comment section, arguing against one another, complaining about how things are in the earth in 2025. Okay, complaining about their government and their leaders and their politicians and their president, complaining about their lifestyles, complaining about the cost of living, complaining about all the corruption that's taking place on earth, complaining about everything that's going on earth. Okay, this is all associated with end times, because as a matter of fact, as the scripture speaks about, Proverbs 29 and 2, it says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. And right now you clearly see the wicked is in rulership, because all you see people doing is mourning. all right, arguing, complaining, crashing out, all right, you know, and leaning towards all types of wicked, harmful habits to cope with the the hell that they're catching, whether it be turning to alcohol, turning to drugs, okay, turning to social media, scrolling all day, turning to pornography and things like that. Okay, people are through. People are mourning because what? The wicked is in power. Okay, it's too much unrighteousness and infirmities and wickedness and evil happening throughout the four corners of the earth, to where it's making people lose their minds. You see that? But according to prophecy, these things must be so in these outer days. Okay, these things must be so. All right, to usher in the second coming of Yahweh Shai. See that? Because hey, one thing you gotta understand, when Yahweh Shai comes back, he's not coming back in the midst of a world where everybody's gonna be all buddy buddy and hugging and kissing and live in harmony with one another. No, okay. Yahweh Shai's coming back in the midst of a chaotic environment, a chaotic earth. Okay, World War III. All right, anarchy everywhere, technology, all over the place. AI, mass surveillance, technocrats ruling everywhere. All humanity linked to a digital grid system via the charagma. All right. When Yahweh Shai returns, he's gonna return in an earth that's gonna be in a chaotic state. And even as Yahweh Shai spoke about in the scriptures, basically when he returns, all the tribes of the earth shall mourn. And we know the tribes of the earth, first and foremost, is talking about Jacob, all right, all the 12 tribes of Israel. Jacob's Jacob's gonna be catching hell leading up to when Yahweh Shai comes back. And Jacob's already catching hell. Look at the northern tribes with all these ice arrests. All right, and now they're starting to come after the southern tribes. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Okay. And as well, okay, all throughout the earth, people are going to be mourning and catching hell by the time Yahweh Shai returns. But again, these things must be so. Okay, as it says again, 2 Ezra 4 verse 29. If therefore that which is sown be not turned upside down, and if the place where the evil is sown pass not away, then cannot it come that is sown with good. See that? So things can get better, i.e. the kingdom of heaven and the throne of David being in power on the earth under Yahweh Shai. Okay, unless things continue to get worse and worse and worse. Okay, and get more and more corrupt and more evil in the earth under the rulership of Esau, Edom. All right, because another thing you got to understand as well, with Esau trying to set up his NWO system, ultimately what Esau's trying to do is set up Satan's kingdom on the earth. Destroy all of creation according to how the Lord through the Elohim created everything on the earth. All right, and recreate all of the Lord's creation in His image. Okay, in the image of Satan. Through technology, AI, pseudoscience, idols. Right. That's the kingdom that Esau is trying to set up in the earth these latter days. A satanic left-hand kingdom of heaven. Okay, where he rules as God. All right, through left-hand carnal means, through pseudosciences, technology, and pharmakeia. All right. So, these things have to happen in the earth these latter days. All right. In order for ultimately for the kingdom to be established. Wickedness would have to be fulfilled in the earth in these latter days in order for righteousness to have to be fulfilled through the kingdom of heaven. All right. It says, verse 30, for the grain of evil seed hath been sown in the heart of Adam from the beginning, and how much ungodliness hath it brought up unto this time. Okay. And it says, especially amongst our people. Okay, because through Eve being first in transgression, following after the ways of the serpent, and then passing those ways down to Adam. Okay, as it goes into in the previous chapter from here, second is the third chapter. Due to Adam's fall, through listening to Eve, who listened to the serpent, the Lord, pretty much appointed death in the seed of Adam, primarily through the chosen seed of Adam. All right, the sons of God, the descendants through Adam, through Seth. All right, the Lord appointed death in our generations, and even to this very day. All right, as the scriptures tells us in the book of Psalms 82, the Lord created us Israelites, going back all the way back to Adam, sons of God. He ultimately created us to be gods on earth, to walk after the ways and the laws and the commandments and the instructions of the Heavenly Father Yahweh. Okay, it was a way that was supposed to just be in us naturally. Okay, we were meant to be gods on the earth. All right, ruling in total righteousness. But, through sin and through corruption, starting with, Eve being first in transgression, and then Adam, following after the ways of the serpent and following after the ways of Cain and the heathen nations. All right, it ultimately led to what? Us being fallen and being subject to death. All right, and falling like the princes of the earth. Roughly paraphrasing Psalms 82. Right, and even to this very day, we as a chosen line, all right, Israelites, sons of God, we've been falling and waxing worse and worse even to this very day. It led us all the way to here in our final captivity here in Babylon the Great, being ruled over by none other than the wicked himself, Esau Edom, the reincarnation of Cain himself, okay, the serpent himself, all right, that old serpent, you see that? But despite how much we as a nation have fallen, through the grace and mercy of Yahweh Bashma Shai, the Lord has raised up a remnant of us, okay, raised up the elect, okay, through the Holy Spirit. The Lord will not be able to number, to be risen up from our fall, okay, and be risen up through Hamashiach Yahweh Shai, okay, to be brought back to our first rightful estate as sons of God all over again. See that? But it says, 2 Esdr 4 verse 30 again, for the grain of evil seed hath been sown in the heart of Adam from the beginning, and how much ungodliness hath it brought up unto this time, and how much shall it yet bring forth until the time of threshing come. Okay, until the time of threshing come. And I'm going to go into the word thresh. Let's get the Google definition of the word thresh. Alright, so this is the definition of the word thresh from Google. It says, separate grain from a plant, typically with a flail or by the action of a revolving mechanism. Alright, and then it says, definition number 2, it says variant spelling of thrash. Variant spelling of thrash. What does thrash mean? Okay, the word thrash from Google, it means beat a person or animal repeatedly and violently with a stick or whip. Okay, it says hit something hard and repeatedly. All right, and then it says definition number 2, move in a violent or convulsive way. All right. Then it says definition number 3 right here, defeat heavily in a contest or match. See that? So the word thresh or threshing, which is a derivative of the a derivative spelling of the word thrash, as we can see, it goes into basically to beat something or something, someone, or an animal repeatedly and violently. Okay. Then, as it even says right here in definition number 3, defeat heavily in a contest or match. All right. But as it went into, to beat something, someone, or an animal repeatedly, as well as violently. Okay, violence basically. Okay, and it all ultimately speaks to what? The judgment of the Lord. All right, that's with the threshing. All right, 2 Esdr 4 verse 30 again. For the grain of evil seed hath been sown in the heart of Adam from the beginning, and how much ungodliness hath it brought forth? It's like it. How much ungodliness hath it brought up unto this time? And how much shall it yet bring forth until the time of threshing come? Basically what? Meaning what? Until the time of the Lord's judgment come. Which is what? In these end times. Okay? At the end of Esau's rulership. Alright? And real quick, let me get this. Let me get this real quick. Going into Revelation 18, the judgment upon Babylon the Great. Alright? Because as we went into that Google definition of the word thresh, which is a derivative of the a derivative spelling of the word thrash, it went into to violence, right? You know, beating something, someone, or an animal violently, right? Well, how is Babylon the Great, according to Revelation 18, going to go out? All right, Revelation 18, verse 21. It says, "And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence," see that? "Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all." Okay, and that's a judgment of Yahweh Shema Shai. Okay, to throw down Babylon the Great. Okay, with violence. Okay, to thrash this place via what? That great millstone, which is likened to what in this particular verse? Yahweh Shai. Okay, Yahweh Shai is this great millstone that the Lord is going to use to throw this place down with violence. Okay, Babylon the Great. All right, to thrash this place. All right, and I also want to get this. This is Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 33. It says, "For thus saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, the power of Israel, the daughter of Babylon is like a threshing floor. It is time to thresh her." See that? It says, "Yet a little while, and the time of her harvest shall come." See that? So, as we read again in 2nd Ezra 4, verse 30, okay, the latter part where it says, "And how much shall it yet bring forth until the time of threshing come?" Whereas we see here in Jeremiah 51 to 33, the time of threshing is going to come upon the rulership, or rather the last days of the rulership of Babylon the Great. Okay, the daughter of Babylon, as we're reading here in Jeremiah 51, was the daughter of Babylon is speaking of what? Okay, not the ancient Neo-Babylonian Empire, but rather what? Babylon the Great that we just read in Revelation 18. Okay, so the time of threshing of Yahweh Shema Shai in his outer days is synonymous, all right, or rather associated with the judgment upon the daughter of Babylon, Babylon the Great. Okay, let's read it again. It's like Jeremiah 51 verse 33. It says, "For thus saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, the power of Israel, the daughter of Babylon is like a threshing floor. It is time to thresh her," or thrash her, right? You know, beat this place down violently and repeatedly through what? You know, these different judgments and plagues that the Lord is getting ready to bring upon this place. You know, famine, pestilence, civil war, civil unrest, martial law, okay, teeth of wild beasts, apparitions, you know, just to name a few, right? It says, "It is time to thresh her, yet a little while, and the time of her harvest shall come." See that? So the threshing that we're reading about here in 2nd Ezra 4 verse 30 is associated with these end times. Okay, the end days of the rulership of Babylon the Great, the daughter of Babylon, which is America. Okay, you know, we're just about any time of the threshing of the Lord upon this place. Okay, to bring this place down violently. See that? And I also want to get this as well. This is Habakkuk chapter 3. Habakkuk 3. Alright, and in this chapter, the prophet Habakkuk is seeing the judgment of Yahweh Shema Shai in his outer days. Alright, primarily via the chariots. Alright, because as it speaks of in verse 11 in this chapter, Habakkuk 3 verse 11, "The sun and moon stood still in their habitation, at the light of thine arrows they went, and at the shining of thy glittering spear. Okay, and it's verse 11 in the NLT. It says, the sun and moon stood still in the skies as your brilliant arrows flew and your glittering spear flashed. Okay, and what is the brilliant arrows and the glittering spear of the Lord talking about? That's talking about those laser beams that's going to be shooting down out of the mouth of the chariots. Okay, because again, not only is the Lord going to destroy Babylon the Great, okay, not only is the Lord going to thrash this place, Babylon the Great, via the missiles, all right, but he's also going to destroy this place and turn it into a lake of fire via the fire from the chariots of Yahushua and the holy angels. All right, those laser beams. See that? And it says, verse 12, Habakkuk 3, verse 12, thou didst march through the land in indignation, thou didst thresh the heathen in anger. You see that? Thou didst thresh the heathen in anger. Okay? And as a matter of fact, verse 13 says, thou wentest forth for the salvation of thy people. Who's the Lord's people? The nation of Israel, starting with the elect. Okay? Even for salvation with thine anointed. Okay? The elect through Yahushua. It says, thou woundest the head out of the house of the wicked. And what is that? The house of the wicked in these latter days? Babylon the Great, America. Okay? And who's the wicked that rules this place? Esau, Edom. All right? And it says, by discovering the foundation unto the neck, Selah. Discovering the foundation unto the neck. The Lord making inquisition upon Esau, Edom, discovering all his sins. Okay? This testimony going out. All before the Lord judges this place. Okay? Thrashes this place. All right? So here we see again, the great threshing of the Lord in these latter days is synonymous with, okay, the destruction of Babylon the Great, the judgment on Babylon the Great, okay, as well as simultaneously synonymous with the salvation of the Lord's people, okay, the elect. All right, because when the Lord begins to, bring great judgment upon this place, Babylon the Great, America, as well as throughout the four corners of the earth, we know according to the scriptures, the Lord is going to protect his elect, make sure that we have provision during these days. Lord will not be able to number. Okay, make sure that we have food and covering. All right, and ultimately, when the Most High sends Yahushua back to finish this place off, all right, to thresh this place by way of fire. Okay. Also, simultaneously, the elect are going to be getting beamed up into the chariots and delivered out of the destruction that the Lord is going to be bringing upon this place. You see that? But overall, as it's going into, okay, the threshing of the Lord. Let's read it again. 2 Esdr 4 verse 30. For the grain of evil seed hath been sown in the heart of Adam from the beginning, and how much ungodliness hath it brought up unto this time, and how much shall it yet bring forth until the time of threshing come? Okay, we're just about in the time of threshing. All right, the end of Babylon the Great, America, these end days of Esau, Edom ruling. All right, the Lord's getting ready to thrash this place. All right, by great judgments, and ultimately by fire. Okay, it says, verse 31, ponder now by thyself how great fruit of wickedness the grain of evil seed hath brought forth. And when the ears shall be cut down, all right, what is the ears talking about? These wicked and ungodly people that's throughout the earth, especially primarily here in Babylon the Great. Okay, and that also includes the 2/3 of our people that's going to be cut off and die in this place. All right, it says, and when the ears shall be cut down, which are without number, how great a floor shall they fill? All right, because it's going to be, millions upon millions of people here in Babylon the Great that's going to be cut down. All right, judged, sent back to the spirit world when the Lord gets busy with this place. And there's only going to be a small remnant that's going to be delivered out of Babylon the Great. Okay, 1/3 of the Lord's people, the elect. All right, as well as the Lord is going to also deliver the elect of the nation of Israel that's also scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. You see that? But the great judgments of Yahweh Bashim Shai in these outer days, as well as the great deliverance of Yahweh Bashim Shai in these outer days, is going to come primarily out of here, Babylon the Great. You see that? The place of the great threshing. Okay? But, overall, pretty much, what it's all going into in this chapter is that, before things can get better, i.e. the kingdom of heaven, things have to get worse and worse in these outer days. All right? And even, when you read chapters such as Matthew the 24th chapter, for example, when Yahushua was breaking down to the disciples on the things that will be going on in a lot of days leading up to his second coming, at no point in that chapter did Yahushua say that things would somehow get better or things would be okay in a lot of days leading up to his second coming. No. All throughout that chapter, he spoke about how things would get worse and worse and worse leading up to his second coming. All right, it will be as it was in the days of Noah. Right, many will come in his name, saying, "I am anointed," and shall deceive many. Many great deceptions will go out. Okay, much tribulation will be happening in a lot of days. Jacob's trouble, persecution, famine, martial law, all these things. Things will get so bad that Yahushua even said, all right, the Most High would have to shorten up the days for the elect's sake, or else what? No flesh would be saved. You see that? So even Yahushua spoke about in the scriptures, all right, in the Gospels, all right, that things would progressively get worse and worse in the latter days leading up to his second coming. So hey, so as we the hopeful elect look at this current war right now, as it's already vexing, to the spirit, we see people still in their folly, people still just scoffing and gainsaying and mocking, walking after their own lusts, okay, being careless. As we continue to see people doing more and more wickedness in these outer days and showing no fear of the Lord, okay, things are gonna get even more vexing in these upcoming days. All right, as things are going to continue to get worse and worse before Yahushua comes back. All right, but guess what? When it's all said and done, when Yahushua comes back to deliver us, the hopeful elect, all right, all this evil and wickedness that we see happening in the earth under the rulership of Esau, Edom, that's all going to be done away with, along with all of our vexations, all of our struggles and afflictions that we go through in this world. All right. And everything is going to be all good, okay, when the kingdom is established. All right. So real quick, Revelation 21 and 4, it says, "And Yahweh Ba'Shem Shai shall wipe away all tears from their eyes." Okay, from whose eyes? The elect, like into the New Jerusalem that John the Revelator is seeing in this chapter. Okay, the New Jerusalem is talking about the elect, okay, coming down from the chariots in the new bodies, right? Indestructible, immortal, incorruptible bodies to set up the heavenly order on the earth, the throne of David, the kingdom of Yahweh Shai, the kingdom of heaven, okay? And it says again, Revelation 21 verse 4, "And Yahweh Shai shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain." Okay, all this pain and affliction and struggles and hell that we're catching in these outer days. Hey, when it's all said and done, when Yahushua comes back, that's all going to be done away with. Okay, no more pain, no more of us going through these curses, no more being subject to fines and payments, no more being ruled over by Esau, Edom, the devil, and these heathen nations. Okay, all of our pain and our struggles and our vexation that we go through in this world, that's all going to be done away when Yahushua returns. It says, "For the former things are passed away." What are the former things? Being in this flesh, being subject to death, okay, subject to vanity, subject to sin, subject to going off against Yahweh Shai, subject to being ruled over by Esau and these heathen nations. Okay, that's all going to be done away with and passed away, okay, when Yahweh Shai comes back to deliver us. You see that? Hey, and guess what? Even when we get into the kingdom, all right, in hell, even when we get into the chariots, Lord will not be of that number. Okay, all the hell and the the wickedness and the evil that we experience right now on the earth right now under Esau. Hey, as it speaks of in Psalms 126, I believe. Okay, it's all gonna feel like a dream when it's all said and done. Like we just came out of a bad dream. This is Psalms 126 and verse 1. It says, a song of degrees. When the Lord Yahweh Shai turned again the captivity of Zion, okay, deliver the elect out of captivity throughout the four corners of the earth, primarily here in Babylon the Great. It says, we were like them that dreamed. It says, then was our mouth filled with laughter and our tongue with singing. Then said they among the heathen, the Lord Yahweh Shai hath done great things for them. You see that? So when the Lord delivers us out of our captivity, wherever we're scattered at throughout the four corners of the earth, all right, it's all going to feel like a dream when it's all said and done. Being in those new bodies, okay, being able to stand in the presence of Yahweh Shai, receiving that crown of life and the palms of victory in our hands. Hey, the victory and the blessings that we're getting ready to receive through the return of Yahweh Shai is going to far outweigh all the afflictions and the hell that we're in, a vexation that we're catching right now under Esau Edom. You see that? It's all going to be like a bad dream, like we just came out of a nightmare. You see? And it says, verse 3, the Lord Yahweh Shai hath done great things for us, whereof we are glad. Turn again our captivity, O Yahweh Shai, as the streams in the south. They that sow in tears shall reap in joy. See that? And that's what we, the hopeful elect, are doing right now. We're sowing in tears. Okay, what are we sowing? This truth. Okay, into the minds of the elect through these videos that we do. Okay, going out on the highways and the byways and preaching the word. Okay, we're sowing this word into the minds of the elect in tears, but it's all going to lead to what? Us reaping in joy. Okay, we're going to receive a reward for all the hard work and effort, all right, that we put into serving Yahweh Shai. Okay, it says again, Psalms 126 and 5, they that sow in tears shall reap in joy. He that goeth forth and weeping, bearing precious seed. All right, what is the precious seed that we, the hopeful elect, bear? This truth, this word. Okay, he that goeth forth and weeping, bearing precious seed, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. See that? Hey, so when it's all said and done, we, the hopeful elect, as things are getting ready to get worse and worse, the straight gate is getting ready to get tighter. All right, Esau's getting ready to lose his mind. All right, but it's all going to lead to what? Us rejoicing. All right, and our enemies being through, 2/3 of our people included. Okay, we're going to win through Yahweh Shai, and Esau is going to lose miserably by way of fire. Okay, but but nonetheless, Lord willing, this video was edifying. And until next time, shalom.